I am Rebecca Lucky. I'm the Sustainability Manager with the City of Menlo Park. Been working for the city for 10 years and happy to be here this morning to talk to you about zero emission landscaping equipment and the direction the city could be taking in regards to rules on how to use gas-powered landscaping equipment in Menlo Park. And so for the person that just joined, I'm going to give a presentation. It's probably less than 20 minutes, and then there'll be some time for questions and answers as well. And this presentation is being recorded, so it'll be uploaded later as well. And you can feel free to reach out to me if you have any other questions after this presentation or webinar, and be happy to answer them. So let's get our presentation started here. So let's see. So I just want to make sure everyone's able to see the screen since I'm the only person on. Maybe if someone just could raise their hand and let me know if you can see my screen. Maybe Lisa, if you could let me know. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, so again, we're here to talk about making the move from gas to electric gardening equipment. And what I'm going to cover today is a couple areas. Get my screen to move here. So we're going to go over the proposed Menlo Park rules and the process for adopting those rules. Go over the state discount program for electric gardening equipment that's for gardening professionals and landscapers. And I'm going to go over to what we're hearing from gardening professionals based on our outreach to date, and then tips on how to transition and support gardeners as we kind of pave a new pathway toward how gardening equipment is used in Menlo Park. And then there'll be questions and answers at the end. There is a Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. Because I'm giving the presentation, I won't be able to kind of answer in real time. But if you can start to populate them, then at the end, I could try to answer some questions. I see a hand raised. Maybe it's because you want to ask a question or you're letting me know that you can see my screen, but I just want to double check. Lisa, did you have a question? You'd have to unmute yourself. Okay, I don't think so. So I am going to lower your hand. All right. So why are we considering rules? There has been a lot of research on this topic at the state level, and I'll kind of go over even where the state's going with electrification of gardening equipment. But really what they have found through their research is that small off-road engines, which we refer to as SOAR equipment, really are not as highly regulated as we have been doing with cars. So cars have Cadillac converters. We've, as a state, made rules about the efficiency of, or fuel efficiency of cars. And so that's really helped us see a decline in emissions from vehicles. And again, the reality is that we live in highly urban areas. And so air quality is an extreme issue in California, especially since we have a lot of microclimates or mountain ranges that tend to keep the pollution kind of in a certain area for quite some time until the wind comes through, or people who are downwind tend to suffer. And so what they're seeing with SOAR equipment, the small off-road engine equipment, is that over the next several years that we're going to see, if we don't do anything now, we're going to see that the smog emissions that come from small off-road engines will actually exceed all of the emissions from cars in California. I think it's important to really note too that small off-road engines, most of that equipment is 70% gardening equipment. A lot of it is just business and homeowner use, and then there is a portion that's professional gardeners and landscapers as well. And just to give people a sense, because I didn't know this when I started kind of researching this, but the California Air Resources found that really kind of how do we place a visual on how much emissions is created through 1 hour use of a leaf blower. And what they have kind of found or equated that to is driving basically 15 hours. So 1 hour of a leaf blower use is equal to producing the same amount of smog as driving from LA to Denver. And 1 hour use of a lawnmower is equal to driving 300 miles from LA to Las Vegas. And I think I've gotten quite a few questions about kind of why that is. And, with leaf blowers, at least what I do know is that you're using a mixture of gas and oil that is, which forms more emissions. And again, there's not a lot of regulations around reducing the emissions that come out of this type of equipment. And so that leads to a lot of health issues for the community and also particularly for the workers who are using them. And you'll often see that a lot of times they're not wearing any protective gear as well. And so it does lead to nervous system damage. It causes cardiovascular issues, lung issues as well. And so, there's just numerous reasons why the state and the city is looking at this topic and how can we move forward and transition. So as I kind of mentioned, kind of the overall environmental and health impacts, and residents have also been really concerned about the noise as well. And they've all mentioned, the pollution and worker health and safety. And so we've been hearing residents ask the city to do something about the use of gas-powered leaf blowers over the last several years. And so in October, staff went to city council through a study session, talked about kind of what other cities are doing, where we could potentially go. And we also looked at kind of, once the leaf blowers are transitioned, there's all of this other landscaping equipment that is also just as harmful, noisy, and affect worker health. So we decided to kind of look at the whole landscape, no pun intended, of gardening equipment, and kind of how can we again get people to transition from gas-powered gardening equipment to electric. And so we're also building upon a new California law that will prohibit the sale, not the use, of gas-powered gardening equipment. So the state is going to start that implementation of this law January 1st of 2024. So it's just around the corner. And as part of their kickoff to really motivating manufacturers to make more electric equipment that's better, they are putting forward about $24 million in incentives for landscapers and gardeners. And that started in November of last year in 2022. And I'm going to go over some of that program later. So Menlo Park's proposed regulation would apply to all properties. And it would begin to really start enforcement for leaf blowers and string trimmers, or also known as weed whackers, starting July 1st of 2024. And then the kind of rest of the gas-powered equipment would start to be regulated January 1st of 2029. So again, as I mentioned, staff went to city council in October. We got direction. The council really asked that, while they were supportive of rules, they really wanted more outreach one-on-one with landscapers and gardeners. They're a very hard group to reach because they're very mobile. They don't live in the city, most of them. And so trying to track them down it's been easy in the fact that you can drive around, or I ride my bike around and talk to professionals, but you know, trying to get the information and continue contact, that's what we've been really working on. And so what we've started to do in February and March is we've got a survey up, and we're holding webinars like the one today for the public, and we have separate webinars for landscaping and gardening professionals. And I do want to kind of let everybody know, if you haven't already, to check out our webpage. There's Spanish translation available too on the webpage. There's a little icon you can click on the top and it'll translate the page to Spanish. But it's basically, you know, you type in your browser menlopark.gov /ZELE, Z-E-L-E. And we've also got our survey up. So let me go back to the web page. So the web page has information about the discounts. It has the proposed rules. It'll also post, you know, when we're going to be going to council. So if you subscribe to the page, you'll get regular updates of where we are in the progress of going to council for final adoption of a rule. And then the survey was launched, I want to say probably early February, late January. We've gotten probably like 400 or 500 responses already. We haven't gotten a lot of responses from gardeners or landscapers, so we're really hoping to kind of continue to push and outreach and get some feedback from gardeners and landscapers. But the way to access the survey is it's a different kind of address, but you go to publicinput.com/ZELE, or for the Spanish translation, you just add an S to the end of ZELE. So it's same address, publicinput.com/ZELE with an S. And so anyway, if you have a gardener, landscaper, please encourage them to fill out the survey. So our next stop is next month at the Environmental Quality Commission. So the Environmental Quality Commission is an advisory body to the City Council. So staff is hoping to bring a draft ordinance or a rule to the Environmental Quality Commission, and also let them know what we've heard from the survey and the feedback from the gardeners and landscapers. And then they would ultimately provide their advice to the City Council. And then after we make our stop at the Environmental Quality Commission, we would be going to City Council late April or May, and the City Council will consider adopting the proposed zero emission landscaping equipment regulations. And that's really the final opportunity for feedback. Usually there's 2 readings. So there's a first reading and there's a second reading. So there's actually kind of 2 opportunities within that time frame. And if the regulations or rules get adopted, we will continue public engagement. So there will be a kind of a notification sent to the community and gardeners and landscapers that the City Council has adopted a rule, and if here's how you can transition, here are the resources that you can go to, and let us know if you need any help or assistance. So that's the plan in a nutshell. So I mentioned the state discount program as part of the new law that's going to be coming in effect on January 1st that will prohibit the sale of gas-powered landscaping equipment. And it's called California Core. And we again have information on our website, menlopark.gov/ZELE. And so I've kind of put some examples up here of the significant discounts that are really available to gardeners and landscapers. This is not available, unfortunately, for homeowners or non-gardening businesses. And I've been hearing feedback that residents are kind of asking about if there will be one. It's certainly something that we will bring forward as feedback to the EQC and the City Council as well. And so kind of stay tuned on that front. So I think one thing so my next slide kind of goes over where to get the equipment, but I do want to really highlight, like for example, this Stihl backpack battery operated leaf blower. The regular price is about $700. And so with the state discount program, a landscaper or gardener would be paying $300. And this is a newer product that still's produced. So a lot of the leaf blowers that were electric were more handheld. So this one is, from what I understand, more powerful than the handheld blowers, and the batteries last longer. And there's also power management systems. So also kind of what I learned through the stores and some of a landscaper who fully transitioned was that it's really important to make sure you've got electrical capacity on how you're charging. Usually it does require some level of maybe upgrading a panel or using power management equipment like this one, where you could plug in multiple batteries, but it'll maybe only charge 2 at a time. And once that's done, it'll move on to the next 2. And so that kind of helps save on upgrade cost. And then there's larger kind of cabinet-like power management systems over here as well. Again, normally costs $6,000. The discounted price right now is $1,800. And so the funds are moving very fast. I've talked to a few of these stores. And I think the beauty of this program is that the landscaper or gardener doesn't need to kind of go online or apply. They really just need to show up at the store, show that they've got a business license, a business card, or maybe they're a regular customer of these stores, and the store dealer can verify that, yes, this is a gardener and landscaper who is eligible for the discount. And so we've got a few of them close by: Ewing Garden Land Center in Campbell, Horizon Distributors, which is in Menlo Park, and San Mateo Lawnmower. So each one sells sometimes a certain brand. Some sell like all brands. So it's definitely good for the gardener and landscaper to shop around. So what have we been hearing from gardening professionals? So as I mentioned, we've been doing one-on-one outreach, but that really began as soon as we got direction from City Council in October, and it's really still ongoing. So in the sustainability division, there's myself, and I have another management analyst that works in the division. I've been out riding my bike, as I actually ride my bike to work. And so when I come in, I spend like maybe an hour or so trying to find gardeners, which is not really hard. And then also when I leave as well, and I give them information about the state discount program on electric equipment. On our webpage, I've created kind of a flyer that kind of shows what was on that last couple of slides, where this is the cost of the equipment and here's what you would pay, rather than trying to send them to a website. That's been pretty effective. I also try to collect their contact information so we can send information about discounts and webinars and transition tips. And we'll continue to use that information if rules do get adopted in May or April. So it'll be a really good catalog of folks' information where we can text, email, or mail them letters. And we've also asked their thoughts on transitioning. And community volunteers have also been a really big help. I mean, there's only so much ground we can cover, and the gardeners and landscapers are highly mobile. So, they may be at one site for 40 minutes and we just miss them. I've actually had to chase down probably trucks before because they were just leaving. So again, community volunteers, if you can, if you walk in your community, we do have materials that you can hand out, so that's helpful, and I'll go over that too in a few more slides. And so we have offered at least 3 webinars, and I think the last one is tomorrow morning, and we do have them recorded. So the first one we did, it was I think about 2 weeks ago, and the recording is up on our website, menlopark.gov/Zelly. We did utilize Spanish interpreters as well, so the video is in English, or you can select Spanish. We did an interview with a gardener that has almost fully transitioned to 80% electric equipment. They've done that over the last 2 years. It's a really good interview. And then we also had a presentation from the store representatives offering the discounts. And they also offered tips on how to safely charge multiple batteries. And again, you can access the recording and webinar dates on our webpage. And we will also be emailing and texting the webinar recording in English and Spanish to gardeners for the contact information that we do have. So kind of the feedback that that has been coming across to us is that, you know, a lot of times when I've encountered gardeners or landscapers, they already have electric equipment in their truck because they do work in other cities with rules, but they still avoid using the equipment where possible, even in the cities that do have rules. And part of the reason is that they're saying that the battery life is very short. So, you know, if you're doing a job and you're kind of having a leaf blower on high or turbo, it lasts about 20 minutes. And so this then involves them purchasing a lot of batteries that they have to carry around and the whole kind of charging infrastructure that's needed. And then the other aspect is because the power of the electric equipment is not as great as the gas-powered equipment, it takes longer to complete a job. And I've looked into the specifications of gas versus electric, and it is, you know, their comments are very much validated into that there is a significant power level, and it does take longer. And we've even heard that from our own kind of staff that use leaf blowers. And so for a small gardener, you know, who has a route of a certain amount of customers, it can really affect their bottom line. They might lose customers, or they need to hire more labor if all of a sudden a job that takes 40 minutes is now taking an hour. And there's a lot of language barriers I encountered as well. And there's also this other layer of hesitation in talking to customers about the transition and how to communicate that, and the cost to really address the high cost for equipment and all the extra batteries that they need, or even the increased labor. And so, you know, again, I think with any transition, I work in kind of a field where it's always requiring people to change in some way, shape, or form. And, you know, I think there are, when we have talked to the landscaper that transitioned, there are a lot of good lessons to learn. I think part of it is rethinking about when you use a leaf blower, how you use it, and how can you still gain efficiencies. But the landscaper that did transition, if you go to the recorded webinar, you can kind of hear his conversation about how he transitioned. There still is a high upfront cost, and there's an investment that all gardeners and landscapers need to make upfront. And so we do anticipate that there will be these conversations of what that means for customer costs. And we're hoping that the community can kind of really feel comfortable having the conversation with gardeners and landscapers, because I think ultimately that'll also make them feel comfortable and confident that they can make it and do this transition. And so another undertone of the conversations was the inability for the city to effectively enforce, which affects the transition. So this wasn't quite said outright, but in talking to some of the landscapers that work in Palo Alto who have restrictions on gas-powered leaf blowers and who also work at Menlo Park, there was kind of this sense of, you know, if somebody else is still using the gas-powered leaf blower and I'm not, and I have to change my pricing because the productivity is not at the same level, you know, they are feeling like there's still this competitiveness where they could lose their customer because someone else is still using a gas-powered leaf blower. And so I think it'll be really important for the city to look at how are we going to effectively enforce the transition so that gardeners and landscapers also feel that they have a fair, competitive pricing landscape when everyone's using electric equipment. A lot of them didn't know about the discount program or the new state law, so that was also part of the education component. I have checked in with the store dealers and have asked them, you know, are you seeing a lot more foot traffic from Menlo Park? And actually, one of the store owners was saying, like, I've seen so many people, thank you for all the outreach you've been doing. They mentioned some girl on a bike is telling them about the discount program, and they're walking into the store. And they've ordered a lot of equipment. So I think that's been a really positive outcome of the outreach. and again, speaks to kind of why we need volunteers to really help, because many still don't know about the discount program. And I think the one thing I did learn too is that a lot of them are really aware that they do need to transition at some point in the future. And if you watch the interview with EnviroViews, it's Armando Vega, he really talks about like why he transitioned, kind of what the barriers were. And there definitely is kind of, you know, when somebody's been doing something for 20 or 30 years, you know, it becomes very difficult to kind of see how else to do the work. You're just so used to doing it. And so a lot of times, like the landscapers I've been talking to, like the sons or the children, like of who are kind of part of the business, are more interested in trying to figure out how to make it happen, and trying to convince you know, their parents that are operating the business on how to go about it. And that's exactly Armando's story. Like he used his own money to try to convince his family that this was going to work. And so it's definitely a lot of people trying to move the needle along. So how can you help? You can engage your gardener to fill out the survey. Again, it's publicinput.com, Zelly, and you add an S if you want it in Espanol or Spanish. You can send the webinar video to your gardener. I think that would be great as well. It's again on our webpage, and give them the equipment discount information. And these discounts, again, will not last. They are definitely going fast. I've heard from the stores that they're reserving so many electric equipment, like it's not even, like the manufacturers are not able to even keep up with the amount of equipment. So I anticipate that it's probably going to run out, you know, probably by summertime at the rate it's going right now. So we're hoping to really, again, connect gardeners and landscapers with the discount program. And as I mentioned, if you're a walker in your neighborhood, you can actually pick up some materials at City Hall at the building division. So we already have a lot printed out. We usually give about 20 per volunteer, and you can hand it out to gardeners or kind of leave it on the truck where you see gardening equipment. Like I usually put it on the windshield between the wiper and the windshield. So I've gotten this question a lot too, and we're definitely going to, as part of the outreach, talk to landscapers and gardeners about how do you reduce the use of powered gardening equipment. And again, Armando from EnviroViews talked about, like, when do we really need to use a leaf blower? And I think if you're up for it, you can embrace a less manicured look and kind of let nature do its thing. And part of that's sometimes leaving the leaves lie, because that really does help build mulch, healthy soil, and habitat for pollinators and wildlife. They usually find warmth in the leaves and some other facts, or some other kind of benefits as well. There's also grass cycling. You can leave grass clippings on the lawn or use a mulching mower. I did not know what a mulching mower was, so I had to look that up. And basically it's kind of a mower without the bag, but it has kind of a finer pair of kind of cutting razors where it's finer, so you don't even kind of notice the clippings. It doesn't kind of build up, so that's also an option. And again, clippings are really beneficial for lawn, and they do decompose quickly and disappear quickly. And another, I've heard this from gardeners who have transitioned, and also residents, that, you know, we need to kind of do more outreach around avoiding the use of leaf blowers around plantings, because they really erode and compact the soil, and it damages the habitat for beneficial insects and pollinators. And again, you know, I'm talking a lot about pollinators, but there really is a worldwide problem with pollinators. Their populations are shrinking. And if you're wondering what pollinators are, those are ants, beetles, wasps, lizards, birds, bats, and butterflies. They all find refuge in leaves and kind of landscaping material that's around. And the EPA is really working to protect bees and other pollinators, because of course, if they're not around, it starts to affect our food chain in lots of ways that are not good for us or other creatures. And so you can also reduce or replace your lawn, again, if you're up for it. Lawns do use a lot of water. They take a lot of labor to maintain. they do account for large quantities of fertilizer and gasoline use. And I don't know if you know, but Menlo Park does offer a rebate program to replace your lawn. So it's $2 per square foot of lawn replaced with water conserving plants, and an additional $300 if you kind of create a rain garden where it's kind of got that sunken look, like it's almost like a dry stream. And you can find out more information at on our webpage on water conservation. So that's menlopark.gov /water conservation if you're looking for more information about the rebate. And you can also kind of go in there and get ideas of kind of planting or gardens. I took some examples from Sunset on how a garden could look without a lawn. You can also use a broom or a rake. Does take longer, or try a lawn sweeper. So if you're kind of doing this on your own, you maintain your own garden or lawn. Lawn sweepers work by using thin, fast rotating brushes, and they pick up, it's like kind of like a vacuum cleaner basically. And so that can also help if you're looking to not have anything on your lawn. And also on our Zelly webpage, we do have reviews on electric equipment. It kind of refers you back to the California Air Resources Board, but I've gone through them, and they're mostly kind of for residents, I'd say, not for gardeners. I would advise gardeners or landscapers to talk to dealers about which kind of electric equipment would work best for their operations. But if you're, again, doing your own gardening, I think those testimonials that the California Air Resources Board has are pretty good. And they have leaf blowers, lawn mowers, hedge trimmers. So I recommend that as well. And since I work in sustainability, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about battery disposal. There's always a trade-off, again, when we're trying to do the better environmental behavior or use the better environmental technology. And so, yeah, battery disposal and use of batteries, we're going to have to work through what that looks like in the future and how we reuse batteries, and how, again, maybe how can we not use them as much to kind of preserve the life of batteries. But if you need to dispose of batteries, you can go to the Shoreway. They're open Monday through Saturday from 8:30 to 4. And I got a map here. It's off the 101. You take Holly Street exit, kind of wind your way through and make a left, and there's a Shoreway Environmental Center. They take a lot of other material too. If you've got small amounts of hazardous waste, it's free. So that's a really good option. You can make an appointment with San Mateo County Household Hazardous Waste, or you can also call them and find out where the nearest drop-off event is. And then we do know that Cal to Recycle, there's these bins around Lowe's and Home Depots. You can drop off batteries for free there, but we do recommend calling before you go to confirm, because sometimes things change. And that's the end of my presentation. Okay, so I just want to circle back on some of the questions we heard, and I just wanted to also mention, so the webinars for gardening professionals, we had actually our last one on Sunday. They haven't been well attended, even though we've emailed, text, sent letters. But we're hoping that if we can send the recordings out to them via text, email, that they can review those stories of transition and how to access discounts at their own convenience when it works for them. So just wanted to let you all know that. And see some of the great questions being asked throughout here. So one of the first ones was, why wait so long for lawnmowers to prohibit the use of gas lawnmowers in Menlo Park? There have been electric lawnmowers for decades. Yeah, so I would say Menlo Park is being a leader in this area. Most cities have regulated gas-powered leaf blowers and string trimmers. I think Oakland's probably the only one that I know of that's regulated weed whackers, otherwise known as string trimmers. And so we're just making sure that there is truly enough time for gardeners and landscapers to transition, especially for the smaller businesses. And the idea too is just to really encourage gardeners to take advantage of the state discount program that's available, and knowing that, you know, the state starting January 1st is going to prohibit the sale of gas-powered gardening equipment. Again, hoping that that transition is made easier as equipment reaches the end of its life. But I didn't mention in the presentation there, but we do pose a question in our survey about whether or not the community would like to see gardening equipment like lawnmowers, chainsaws, and hedge trimmers to be regulated sooner than January of 2029. So I recommend, again, going to publicinput.com /Zele, Z-E-L-E, and you can fill out the survey, or again, feel free to reach out to me if you have trouble accessing the survey. And I do see a hand raised, and so I'm going to go through the list of questions and then circle back to you. Dennis, I see your hand raised, so just give me a few more moments. Let's see. What is the city doing to reduce the use of gas equipment? For example, around City Hall, are you reducing lawns and leaving the leaves? So we are currently making the transition to all electric equipment. So we have a number of electric leaf blowers that we're using, and we just purchased an electric riding mower. And I probably need to circle back with Public Works to kind of ask them about their leaving the leaves kind of policy. But I know for walkways, we do, especially if it's wet, want to kind of at least remove them or move them aside so that there's not any kind of hazards for people walking and slipping on wet leaves. And reducing lawns, so we do need to balance the community's desire for kind of outdoor play and use of fields. But again, if you have any ideas, I'd love to hear them, and you can send me a message to my email, rllucky, it's 2 L's, rllucky@menlopark.gov. And let's see, it looks like someone is looking at replacing their lawn. Yes, definitely check out our water conservation rebate page to see if what you're considering would qualify. So why aren't homeowners included in the state discount program? That's a really great question. And so a lot of the emissions that the state is trying to target, at least I think the slide that I showed about how much smog is being emitted from small off-road engine equipment. And I had in there like 70% of the equipment is gardening equipment. An interesting fact is about 8% of that equipment is really from commercial kind of or professional gardeners and landscapers is what they've estimated, but it really does contribute to the most smog from this group of small off-road engines. And so they were really trying to target gardeners and landscapers. I think also because they buy the most, equipment frequently, that they could kind of send a stronger signal to manufacturers that this is happening. Please, you need to kind of expedite, backpack powered leaf blowers or invest in battery technology that's better. And so that was the intent. But if you're Again, if you have feedback about a program for homeowners that you'd like the city to consider, I would definitely, again, recommend filling out our survey or emailing me on that front so we can take your feedback to the city council. And then what are the long-term disposal issues with lithium ion batteries? Are we jumping the gun like CFL light bulbs, which are made by millions and now leak mercury into the landfills? I get this question a lot. And again, it is a very difficult situation. And so that's part of the reason why we try to look at how can we use less powered equipment, whether it's gas or electric, and of what are strategies that are efficient to help folks get there, or gardeners or landscapers. I mean, that's ideally like that would be the first step. And then the second part is really, you know, there's always a trade-off with any kind of technology or that benefits the environment. And that's why, you know, we just need to be cautious about what are we trying to attain? Are we trying to attain clean air? Are we investing in battery recycling to make that market or that kind of ability to kind of recycle and reuse better? And that's definitely happening. I think if I were to give a big message tonight, it would be just making sure that the batteries do not end up in a waste bin, because that is very problematic. Any kind of batteries really can cause issues, particularly lithium, which can cause fires in waste facilities that process waste. And so again, we want to make sure gardeners, landscapers, and the community knows that disposing of batteries has a very special place. And so please do take them to San Mateo County Hazardous Waste or the Shore River facility in San Carlos. Okay, so I think that ends our questions here. And I see 2 hands raised. So Dennis, you'll go first. You should be able to unmute yourself and let us know what your thoughts are.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I guess I was just on the whole disposal issue with this lithium ion thing. I guess I was just wondering, there doesn't seem to be a way to recycle those batteries as of yet. And so I guess I'm just wondering, are we just gonna stack them up somewhere and we're gonna have another giant dump of lithium ion batteries? Because I mean, there's a lot of lithium ion batteries out there already, but I'm kind of concerned about, you know, I guess they can be recycled from what I understand, but I don't think there's a process. I guess it's pretty complicated from what I understand. So I've got that concerned. And then I guess the other thing I'm concerned about is, since I'm a homeowner, I do all my own landscape work. And of course I have professional gas powered equipment, but it doesn't get used that much. And I mean, I think I use my string trimmer about twice a year for less than 15 minutes each time. You know, like a gas powered hedge trimmer or a electric powered hedge trimmer with the batteries, those are quite a bit heavier, and you've got to, you know, raise those over your head. There's a lot of swinging that goes on with doing, you know, hedge trimming. So I don't know. I'm trying to balance all this out. You know, I completely understand where you're going with a gardener that uses it 24/7. You know, 8 hours a day. But for a homeowner that's using it a couple times a year, I'm struggling a little bit with that. You know, I guess the other thing is, I know Palo Alto has some regulations, but if we pollute the air, I mean, I 100% in agreement with polluting the air, but I'm trying to understand, for such limited use, is it, I've got to go out and spend a whole bunch of money to buy this equipment over again, with no guarantee that it's really going to do the job as well as the gas equipment. So I don't know, just some thoughts that I had. There's kind of a lot there, but I don't know.
No, thank you so much, Dennis. I really appreciate it. Yeah, and you're definitely not the first to kind of raise the point about, the homeowners or residents are not necessarily using gas equipment as much as gardeners.
Well, far less.
Right. And I think where the challenge is for the city on that is, on one hand, it makes enforcement very difficult. Because people are still hearing it, and then it kind of, we want to have that uniform approach. Also, when gardeners hear it, they're thinking that, oh, it's all of a sudden allowed, and it kind of continues the behavior. And I wrote down your point about lithium batteries, and kind of making notes for us to kind of look into that some more, and see what's happening in that area, and the trade-offs that we're making to really highlight that as well to our decision makers. So that's another point we'll also bring forward.
Yeah, I guess I just back. I guess what I was trying to find to put forward some research, because I try to look at these things from a fairly scientific standpoint. Has a net zero sum equation been drawn, which includes the mining, the use and disposal of the product over the lifetime, and its impact versus gas. And that's I can't find that information, of course, but I don't know. I'm just trying to look at this from a I brought up in my question there, like the CFL light bulbs. We got to reduce energy use, so everybody went out and produced those CFL light bulbs, and nobody really understood that that part of the ignition process inside the glass is they put this minute amount of mercury in there, but when you start multiplying that by millions, and then they never really had a proper disposal program for those CFL light bulbs, so millions of those light bulbs are sitting in landfills now, leaking mercury. So I don't want to be, I guess I don't want to, are we really jumping the gun? Has anybody really looked at this? I guess that's my question.
Yeah, and I'd have to probably get back to you on that. We're looking at just the trade-offs, like what's the community value versus kind of the disposal method, and the priority for us is to really make sure it gets disposed of properly, because we do not want it leaking in a landfill or anything like that. But again, appreciate your comments, Dennis. We got a few other hands raised, noted it. If you have anything else to share, feel free to email me or give me a call.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so next we have Roxanne. All right, you should be able to unmute yourself and
Hi.
your thoughts.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you, Rebecca, for this presentation. I learned a lot, and thank you for doing all this work. I think it's really important. I have been protesting gas leaf blowers, not electric ones, but gas leaf blowers since the last century. This is not new. I mean, in the 90s, we tried to get a ban on gas leaf blowers in this city. So I think that this is a health issue, a serious health issue. Children are getting asthma from these leaf blowers. my neighbor's leaf blower that his gardener used, it stinks. I mean, I don't care if the gardener's wearing, I mean, I feel sorry for the gardener, but if he's wearing a mask, fine. But all the little kids that are going home from school gotta walk by that stuff. I can smell it even when I'm in my house, and it's very, very loud. So I'm really glad you did this, that now I know gardeners can get help getting a new equipment. They can rethink the way they do their business. And one item that I really appreciated you bringing up was how this needs to happen and be enforced so that it will be a fair playing field for all of the gardeners. The reason in the 90s that the ordinance that was almost passed in Menlo Park wasn't, as I recall, was because of concern about gardeners. And so it was put to a vote, and eventually it didn't pass. And I understand that. But I think this situation, when you look at the information you put down about how these things might cause more smog than automobiles, and we know smog kills, that this really has to change. And I think once it's a fair playing field for all of the gardeners, and we enforce this law, people do not use gas leaf blowers, eventually other gas gardening tools or whatever gas things that are polluting the air, it will work for the gardeners, because people will have to adjust. They'll either have to pay more if they want to have these pristine, not a speck on their lawn, whatever, or they will adjust their criteria for their gardener. So I like your idea, and I mean, I like what you've told us, and I really hope that when you talk to the council, that the council understands that this needs to be passed, and that needs to be passed with an understanding that people will have to obey the law, and the law will have to be enforced fairly and for everybody, so that we don't have the problems that the gardeners are now facing, where it's an unfair playing field because some people get to use a leaf blower and some people don't. Thank you. Thanks again. I really appreciate all you've done. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Roxanne, and thanks for sharing all of your thoughts. And again, if you have any other ideas, please feel free to reach out to me. And I've definitely noted, the priority of health and also the concerns for workers' health as well. So thank you again for that. Okay, so we've got one more hand raised, which is good because we're about at the end of our webinar here. Let me I got Oli. Hi. You can unmute yourself, and I think you already are, but feel free to share your thoughts right now. I don't think we can't hear you if you are speaking. If you want to type your thoughts, that could work too. I see you're trying to unmute. Sure, Ollie, we'll give you a few seconds here. Get connected.
All right. Can you hear me now?
Yes,
Oh,
welcome
I'm
to being
sorry.
unmuted.
Sorry about that. I had to go and borrow a camera from my wife. It has the microphone I normally use. Thank you, Rebecca, for the presentation and for making Spanish wording available to people who need that. A lot of our gardeners do. And there was so much truth in this presentation. I had a few thoughts, but Dennis, could I just pop you ahead to my line of thoughts and your CFL comments? So recycle your CFLs at Ace Hardware first of all. But lithium is not, lithium-ion batteries have no mercury in them. They're not like CFLs. And lithium, the question is not how to dispose of it. The question is how we create a circular economy with lithium. And J.B. Straubel, who was the co-founder of Tesla, which, by the way, Elon Musk is not, he is now working at a company called Redwood Materials, and they are definitely going to be able to fully recycle lithium-ion batteries. They got a huge DOE guaranteed loan recently under the IRA. There are other companies out there doing the same. One of them is called Ascent Materials. They claim that they can take stuff out of old lithium-ion batteries and make them better than new to produce second generation better batteries. So I hear a lot of worries and worrisome pictures that people are presenting about stacks of lithium-ion batteries in the deserts in Nevada and Arizona. But none of that is true. Lithium is super expensive. It will get recycled. So going back to gardening, I talked with our gardener, and we offered to pay for electrical equipment for him, and I would encourage everybody to do likewise. But he kind of frowned and then took his Apple earphones out of his ears and looked at me and said, you know, in Los Altos and Palo Alto and Los Gatos, they've had all these leaf blower bans, and now Menlo Park is following suit. And it's only happening, he said, in Menlo Park because it happened in Palo Alto and Los Gatos. And then he says, in all of those other places, there really has been no change in the usage of gas-powered equipment by gardeners because there is no enforcement. And so he's basically saying, you can buy me a battery-powered leaf blower or lawnmower. I will use it here if you ask me to, but don't expect it'll happen elsewhere. And indeed, I talked with my neighbor who said he had asked his gardener already, please use an electric leaf blower, and his gardener does that. And the next place he goes is across the street where he serves a second property, and right over there he powers on the gas-powered one. So I think we need to really double up on this is something we're going to enforce, because otherwise it's going to have no impact. Like my gardener said, no impact in Palo Alto, Los Gatos, Los Altos. Menlo Park is just following, and nothing will happen here unless you enforce it. And personally, I would be happy to ask my neighbors to call the police if my gardener is using the gas-powered leaf blower, and reciprocate if need be, because nobody wants to, I don't know, get in a conflict with their gardener, but perhaps I could do it for my neighbors and they could do it for us. My final comment is, there were some comments about how these electric tools are not quite as powerful and maybe not good enough, and it'll take 20 minutes longer to do the jobs than it would have otherwise. Well, that's just absolutely baloney, because you can drive a Tesla up to Lake Tahoe, and it drives up to Lake Tahoe way better than a gas-powered car. And if you can drive a Tesla to Tahoe, you can blow the leaves off your front lawn. So let's just not accept that kind of excuse for staying with two-stroke engines and fouling up the air. Thank you, and I do appreciate the half minute I got to get the camera out. Let me end it here.
Thank you, Ollie. Thank you so much. I'm glad you were able to unmute, and again noted your thoughts and appreciate kind of your in-depth knowledge about batteries. And so hopefully that's helped our conversation tonight with some of the inquiries that we've received from our attendees. But again, we will kind of understand what those trade-offs are and have that conversation about batteries, because again, this is not the first time this is coming up as well, and it does come up in a lot of conversations that we have, not just with gardening equipment. So I think that brings us to the end of our webinar. And I'm glad that it sounds like some of you did enjoy it, and it was informational. If you have any questions, just feel free to reach out to me. And again, the next stop is the Environmental Quality Commission in April. It'll either be April 17th or the next Wednesday after that. We just need to make sure that we coordinate schedules with commissioners and their availability. And then we'll be going to council in May of this year. And again, where we would start enforcement is weed whackers and leaf blowers, July 2024. And encourage you to fill out the survey. It's publicinput.com/ZELE, Zelly, not the Zelly from Big, not to transfer money, but one L. So again, hopefully you're staying dry tonight and safe. Thank you so much, and have a great rest of the night.